This afternoon, writer and journalist E. Jean Carroll today left the Manhattan federal courthouse to applause and cheers after closing arguments in her civil lawsuit against the former president. Ms. Carroll says Trump raped her in New York City in the mid-90s. She says he then defamed her by calling her accusation a hoax and a lie. During this 2-week civil trial, E. Jean Carroll testified on her own behalf. She said at the outset simply, quote, "I'm here because Donald Trump raped me, and when I wrote about it, he said it didn't happen. He lied and shattered my reputation, and I'm here to try and get my life back." In the end, Trump himself chose not to take the witness stand to rebut her. Despite telling reporters in Ireland last week that he would come to New York to confront her in the courtroom, he did no such thing. That means the only Trump appearance the jury will have seen throughout this entire trial is the video from his deposition in the case, which lawyers for Ms. Carroll played during closing arguments today. At one point in the questioning, the former president mistook a photo of E. Jean Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples. This is despite the fact that Trump has staked his effective defense in this case on the idea that E. Jean Carroll was not his type. Not his type, but he thought she looked enough like his ex-wife that he mistook the two of them in a photo. One attorney for Ms. Carroll told the jury today, quote, "He knows what he did. He knows that he sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll." Again, closing arguments wrapped today. The case will now go to the jury. They'll begin their deliberations tomorrow morning. Joining us now is my friend, Lisa Rubin, MSNBC legal analyst, longtime colleague on this show. She's been covering the E. Jean Carroll civil suit. Lisa, thank you for being here. It's nice to see you under the lights instead of just in the office. It's weird, but good.
Yeah, it's weird, but wonderful.
What exactly is the jury going to decide tomorrow? They're going to be instructed by the judge. It's a civil case.
That's right.
They're being asked not to find guilt or innocence, but rather liability or lack of liability.
That's correct. And they're also going to be asked to find, if Donald Trump is liable, to what amount of damages he is liable to E. Jean Carroll for compensating her for her losses, and also punitive damages. Did he do something so egregious here that it's worth going above and beyond what she lost to send a message to him and to others who might be thinking about this kind of behavior?
Bottom line, in the cold sort of light of day, what's at stake here for Trump is a finding by a jury of liability and some money. In terms of the amount of money, I don't know what counts as a meaningful amount of money for Donald Trump. It's very hard for me to understand somebody in his financial circumstances what that would mean. Has there been anything that's happened in the course of the trial that's given you a sense of what the potential range might be if indeed he is found liable?
Yes and no. So E. Jean Carroll's lawyers presented a damages expert solely on reputational damages. The woman was a professor of marketing and social media who said to mount a reputation repair campaign here would cost somewhere between $350,000 and $2.7 million. But that doesn't include the damage to E. Jean Carroll emotionally. And today, in their closing, her lawyers talked about the loss of companionship in her life. Because of her trauma, she has engaged in avoidant behavior. She doesn't flirt. She doesn't banter. She sort of closes down emotionally. They compared it to a grate closing over a bodega. That she is not capable of sustaining a relationship with a man, and therefore they should consider that in awarding damages as well.
The way that these cases were closed, it's not the prosecution and the defense, but that's effectively the way it works. I felt like there was some suspense, really until late in the day yesterday, as to whether or not there was going to be an additional witness, whether or not Trump was going to turn up. Did it seem clear to you that the case closed today, that Trump's own attorneys basically had two plans, one for if he'd showed up and one for if he didn't, that they closed in a way that they had to because they'd mounted no effective defense?
I think they never expected him to come, and I actually think they didn't want him to come. Joe Tacopina, in his closing today, reiterated so many of the same themes we saw from him in the opening. And one of those themes was, we don't have to mount a defense because how do you prove a negative? This never happened. He said it never happened. I'm even going to show you excerpts from his video deposition where he says emphatically, this never happened. And therefore, we're not putting on a defense. Our sole defense is going to be by cross-examining their witnesses because we can't prove that something that didn't happen. So
our sole defense is his assertion that it didn't happen, regardless of what evidence is provided by the other side.
And poking holes in all the evidence provided by the other side.
Do you think that this was an additionally traumatizing event for E. Jean Carroll, having been there in the courthouse this week. I mean, it's an act of remarkable bravery for her to have brought this case, if her accusations are accurate. Was this case just as painful as it seemed from the outside?
I mean, look, I'm not a psychologist, right? And I don't have any degrees that would allow me to say whether somebody is malingering or telling the truth. But I believed that her story was true for her. The emotion and the intensity that she experienced all throughout the trial, including from the very openings when she turned around and looked Joe Tacopina directly in the face, as if to say to him, how dare you say this about me while I'm sitting in this courtroom, was profoundly affecting. And to see her break down even today after closings were over, hug her lawyer, Robbie Kaplan, in a very emotional moment between the two of them, I think E. Jean Carroll was partially re-traumatized by experiencing this, and yet she said she was so happy that she finally got to have her day in court, and I believe that too.
She got to say her piece.
She did.